Welcome to Renewal Conversations as part of the Team for the Soul. This is meant to help you as a giver to regenerate and renew. I'm Dr. Ioana Popa, the host of the Renewal Nuggets and Renewal Conversations. And today I'm interviewing Dr. Tom Holmes, who is an international trainer for psychologists, social worker, counselors, and holistic therapists. And his specialty is in spirituality and therapeutical process, psychological process, and methodologies. And Tom is the author of The Parts Work, an illustrated guide to your inner life, which has sold more than 50,000 copies. It's a wonderful book, really bringing to the core of how to have inner conversations with different aspects and parts of ourselves. Tom is a PhD in counseling psychology, has taught at Western Michigan University, has been training graduate students. He brings a wealth of knowledge, of wisdom, and professionalism in his work. And I have the pleasure to introduce Tom today. So welcome, Tom. It's so good to connect with you. But it would be helpful if you'd like to just share a little bit about your vocation, about your journey, especially as all your life you've been dedicating helping others. So this is kind of the audience are people who really like to help others. And I thought you'd be such an inspiration. So
yeah, that opening. I was, thinking about that when I thought about it. Oh my gosh, it goes back a long, long time. I was raised in a small town in rural Michigan in a little Methodist church, and I guess my church vocation was the early ways of seeing service as an important part of life. But my professional work began really when I finished college. I started working in substance abuse prevention in the early 70s, and at that point, I was working with youth and doing a lot of the listening skills communication. That was a big thing there, the whole Rogerian training, which I still find to be a foundation of what I offer people. But I realized at that point that I needed more training. So I ended up getting a master's in clinical psychology, a master's in social work, and a PhD in counseling psychology. So I just kept I said, well, I need to know more. I need to know more. And I had a chance when I was in my master's program in clinical psych to do some small training groups with a professor and to lead some small group training groups. And I loved it, and people responded well to me. And that's really the work that I've been doing since then. It's probably almost close to 50 years now. And I taught in the university for 20 years and then retired early about 15 years ago so that I could just do my advanced training in psychotherapy, and especially the integration of spirituality and psychotherapy. And so I wanted to do that around the world. And that's what I've been doing for the last 15 or 20 years.
Oh, that's so exciting. And what brought you to help others? Like, what is kind of the inner motivation? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but it can be so unique for every person.
I guess I grew up in the 60s, right? And, a lot of people, when they think about the movement of the 60s, they think about hippies and they think about drugs and rock and roll and that kind of stuff. But a very powerful part of that movement was kind of seeing love as the primary motivation in life. And that I was in Sweden when I was 16, and I ran into people who were very idealistic, and I think I just got the fire of service to others as being a pathway of love in the world. And it really has been carrying me since. I remember I did when I came home from my first year in college, I gave probably my only sermon ever, which is what the Methodist Youth Fellowship president gets to do when they come back from college after Thanksgiving. And it was on 1 Corinthians 13, the nature of love. And it's funny because I'm just finishing up this new book, which is going to be Parts Work, A Path of the Heart. And it's basically that whole understanding of the nature of love is what I've been studying and trying to understand and trying to open to and open as a healing source in my work. So it's interesting to feel that stream go all the way through 50, 60 years.
And for anyone who doesn't know that passage, First Corinthians, what's the gist of it?
Well, it's, love is patient, love is kind, love endures all, tolerates all. It's this quality of love that it can sound like too much. It's often used in sort of wedding vows or something, but with patience and kindness. But really, this patience and kindness all comes from the same place that IFS, the internal family systems self, comes from, which I think is the nature of heart, right? If we're centered in the core nature of our being, the qualities of patience and kindness and the ability to endure all and tolerate all is also a strength underneath it. It's not just being nice. It's a state of mind that is able to embrace that which is there and suffering as well as joy. So it's that state of mind that allows us to be in that kind of presence, which is what I've been working at cultivating in myself and in those I work with really all of this time. That's I think has been my goal.
And you're so well known into the internal family system world. You taught courses around that. You also have a book, Parts Work. Can you tell a little bit how you found out about internal family system and how did your journey through spirituality? I know I heard you talk about it a little bit before.
Yeah, there's two things. First, I was finishing up my doctoral studies, and I started having a number of clients who were having religious struggles, spiritual struggles, and I had no idea how to integrate those into my mental health work with them. Somehow it was just a void, and it hadn't been talked about in any of my graduate studies. And there was this a flyer arrived on the wall of this little clinic. It said Spirituality and Counseling, led by Pir Vilayat Inayat Khan, Sufi master. And I thought, Pir Vilayat Inayat Khan, Sufi master, what's that? But I said, Spirituality and Counseling, that's exactly what I'm interested in. So I went there and found this teacher of a universal spirituality, it's a Sufism is the mystical wing of Islam, but it has one wing of that is very universalist, and that was the wing that this was. And it was called The Path of the Heart. And there I found an inspiration for a spiritual framework that really has carried with me to this day. And when I went back home, I had this sense of the value of helping people to reconnect to their spiritual life. And one of the people I was working with had severe depression for years, no medication, no therapy was helping. She had psoriasis, skin disease, and I hadn't known what to do with her. And but she had mentioned, she was one of the people I was thinking about with the spiritual struggle. She was sexually abused by her priest. And that was such a terrible thing because it cut her off from the very source of healing that she needed.
Yeah.
So she was still a believer, but at the same time, she was all confused about her beliefs. And we found together a Saint Dymphna, which is both the saint of mental health, but also the saint of sexual abuse survivors. And we began in the therapy for her to just crystallize the questions, and she prayed to Saint Dymphna. And I swear, in 3 weeks, her depression was gone. Her psoriasis was gone. And I was thinking, I've been doing therapy for 6 years. I've never seen anything like that. What is this? So that's kind of one of the ways I start this new book is with that narrative, because it just set me on a path of saying there's huge healing power when a person can reconnect to their spirit. And so then I tried for the next 10 years really to study that integration, but it was all intellectual. I was reading the books on it, but it was in the head. And it wasn't until I started working with IFS,
internal family systems,
that I found a model where it integrated naturally. And I came to internal family systems because my wife, Lori, who's helped author our book, Parts Work, she was at a conference where she saw Dick Schwartz, and he was introducing this model at that time in the late 80s. And she came home and she was really excited about it. And at that point, I had my 3 master's degrees. I had studied all kinds of therapies. I was actually burned out. I was ready to say, I'm done with this. I think I'll just teach developmental psychology at the university. I do that pretty well. And this therapy thing is just not rewarding enough for me. And I had been doing every model of therapy I learned, I did my own therapy, right? And one of the main themes of the therapy in my last one was a 2-year Jungian analysis where the main theme was, I want to stop being a therapist. And so, and I was really ready to quit. And then I said, no, I don't want one more model. I have enough models. I'm just done. She said, no, you have to go see this. And so it sounded pretty strange, these different parts of ourselves.
Right, a part of me says this, a
part
part
of me says that. And what is this multiplicity of our inner life thing? But as I listened to him, it started making sense. And I live a couple of hours from Chicago. So I was able to go to Chicago and train with him back then. It was a very small group of 5 or 6 people that he was training. And I did my own therapy in that model with a person who had only been trained for a year. And in 3 or 4 sessions, I had undone some of the knots that were creating my own burnout. And it was like, wow. And so I started running around to all kinds of agencies, telling let me show you this new model. Let me show you this new model. I was like an evangelist. And
yes.
So, yeah. So, and then, for people who are new to it, I really suggest our book Parts Work, because it's written in everyday language. And what I really like about it is it can be very relevant to people who have doctorates and people who are completely non-psychologists. 12-year-old kids love it. Some of the parents report that their teenage kids take it up to the bedroom and they don't get it back for a while.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's both everyday language and it's deep at the same time.
Yes, it is. This is the book that Tom is talking about, Parts Work, and it's really fun. I recommend it often. Lots of illustration, and it's so clear and such an easy flow. So thank you for this book, Tom.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for the artist Sharon Eckstein who illustrated it. It has over 100 drawings in it, and when I'm teaching this particular work, the pictures are so important because it keeps us out of that sort of linear thinking of our left brain.
Yes.
And allows us to understand ourselves and others from a whole nother way. So the pictures are really important.
Absolutely.
So that was, I just got really excited about it. And I was having a hard time teaching it actually as a kind of conceptual thing to large groups. And that's when I started thinking about using pictures. And Sharon was one of my students, and I had everybody do illustrations of their own inner parts, all the different parts of themselves. And Sharon does this illustration of her different parts, and it was like, wow. So it turns out she was a professional artist getting re-educated in counseling psych. And I started using those pictures to teach people. And all of a sudden, where I had struggled in an hour to clarify what this model was about, in 5-minute, 10-minute PowerPoint with pictures, people says, oh yeah, I got that, of course, that's cool.
Got it, that's right. And I got inspired by you, Tom, and I actually taught at Hellenic College, Holy Cross. I taught a course on self-care for helping professionals.
Yeah.
So I've used part of the book, The Internal Family Systems, and we use the cards that are illustrated by Sharon in this book, and also creating the map and the drawing. And it's been quite an amazing journey. Yeah.
I find that the model of parts work, especially combined with spirituality, is the best self-care.
Yeah.
It somehow flows together very well. And it helps us to understand this. That's what it did for me. I mean, first of all, I had this exhausted helper who was just, couldn't go on and wanted to stop. And then I had this marathon running part of me says, we can do this. I'm a long distance runner, right? So I had to fight through pain. And this guy was saying, so this guy could help till he dropped. right? So that part was there. And it turns out when we got to know what was driving them, it was a little boy part who had picked up some burdens in the early part of my life. When I lost my sister to a blood disease. And this little boy picked up certain helping patterns that were burdensome. And through that work, I was able to release those from him so that he could still care for people and offer help, but not with the same intense burden that he had always been doing.
That's wonderful. And what are you doing now, Tom? How do you help others currently? I know that you have several projects internationally and also some books and
So I've kind of, as one gets older and instead of starting happening to me more than a little bit, you kind of focus down. And what I'm doing now is two things. I'll do introductions to parts work in a kind of general large group way. But most of my work is helping people who are already helping professionals in two ways. One is, if they're therapists, to integrate parts work and spirituality. And if they're helping professionals in other ways, how I can help them with burnout prevention through the parts work. And so that's what motivated me to go to Jordan, when the Syrian refugees were flooding into Jordan. And what I did there was work with the mental health professionals, at first primarily with their own burnout prevention, right? So working with them to keep them from burning out. But they were so interested in the model that then I continued on also doing some trainings in the parts work model. So in Germany, I still do both of those things. And I've gone to Korea. The wonderful thing about parts work is it seems to fit all cultures. It adapts to different cultures, right? So it works in the Middle East. It works in the Far East. It's, I actually, my first training happened internationally in early 1990s, 93. We went to Lithuania and Russia right after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Wow.
And Lori offered family therapy training, and I offered parts work workshops. So, and I haven't stopped since.
Yes, and your book has been translated now in what languages?
Yeah, it's in so it was authored in English, and it's been in German, Italian, Arabic. We have at least part of it done in Arabic, and we've just and Korean has been out for a long time, and the Chinese publisher is going to publish it in a year or so, and a French edition will be coming out, and a Greek edition will be coming out.
Wow, congratulations. Yes.